Mystical City of God, translated from the original Spanish by Michael Kress, read by the translator. Dramatizations are also included. This is the full 4-volume Mystical City of God. Book 1, Chapter 16. On the virtues and habits with which the Most High endowed the soul of Mary Most Holy, the first operations she performed with them in the womb of Saint Anne, and the doctrine that His Majesty begins to give me for her imitation. The impetuous current of His divinity flowed forth to gladden this mystical city, Psalms 45, verse 5. The most holy soul of Mary, issuing from the fountain of His infinite wisdom and goodness. The Most High had determined to deposit in this divine lady the greatest treasures of grace and virtue ever seen, and which will never again be granted to any other creature for all eternity. When the time came to bestow these gifts, at the very moment she received her natural being, the Omnipotent fulfilled His eternal desire, which had awaited its proper time to manifest. In His faithfulness, the Lord poured out all these graces and gifts into the most holy soul of Mary at the instant of her conception, to such an eminent degree that no saint, nor all saints together, could ever attain it, nor can human words express it. Although she was then adorned, like a bride descending from heaven, Revelation 21, verse 2, with every kind of infused habit, it was not necessary for her to exercise all these virtues at once, but only those suited to her state within her mother's womb. Foremost among these were the theological virtues of faith, hope, and charity, whose object is God Himself. She immediately began to exercise these virtues. By faith, she perceived the divinity in the highest manner, recognizing His infinite perfections and attributes, as well as the Trinity and the distinct persons within it. This knowledge did not hinder another, which was also given to her of God Himself, as I will explain later, cf. Infra N. 488 to 504. She also exercised the virtue of hope, which looks to God as the object of eternal happiness and the ultimate end. From that moment, her most holy soul was intensely drawn toward Him, with fervent desires to unite herself with Him, never turning to any other object, nor being for even an instant without this holy movement. The third virtue, charity, which regards God as the supreme and infinite good, she exercised in that same instant with such intensity and reverence for the divinity that all the seraphim, in the highest degree of their power and virtue, could not attain to so eminent a level. The other virtues, which adorn and perfect the rational part of the creature, were infused into her in a degree corresponding to the theological virtues. The moral and natural virtues were given to her in a miraculous and supernatural manner, and, in the order of grace, the gifts and fruits of the Holy Spirit were infused in a far higher degree. She possessed infused knowledge and habits of all these virtues and of the natural sciences, so that she knew and understood everything, natural and supernatural, that was fitting for the greatness of God. From the very first moment in her mother's womb, she was wiser, more prudent, more enlightened, and more capable of knowing God and all His works than all other creatures, except for her most holy Son, have ever been or will be for all eternity. This perfection was not only in the habits infused into her in such an elevated degree, but also in the acts corresponding to them, which she exercised in accordance with her condition and excellence, and as far as she was able at that moment, with divine assistance. In this she was subject to no limits or laws other than the divine and most just will of God. I will discuss much more throughout the course of this history of the most holy life of Mary, but here I will express only a portion of what she accomplished at the moment of her conception, with the infused virtues and the actual light that she received alongside them. With the acts of the theological virtues, as I have mentioned, and the virtue of religion, along with the cardinal virtues that follow from these, she recognized God as He is in Himself, as Creator and Glorifier. With heroic acts she revered, praised, and gave thanks to Him for having created her. She loved, feared, and adored Him, and offered a sacrifice of magnificence, praise, and glory for His immutable being. She understood the gifts she had received, and yet, with profound humility, she made bodily prostrations in her mother's womb, even with her tiny body. With these acts, she merited more in that state than all the saints in the highest degree of their perfection and holiness. Alongside the acts of infused faith, she received additional knowledge and understanding of the mystery of the divinity and the most holy Trinity. Although she did not see God intuitively at the moment of her conception, as the blessed in heaven do, she saw him abstractively, with a light and vision inferior to the beatific vision, but superior to all other ways in which God can reveal himself to a created intellect. She was given certain representations of the divinity so clear and manifest that through them she perceived the immutable essence of God. In God, she saw all creatures more distinctly and evidently than any creature can perceive another. These representations acted as a most radiant mirror in which the entire divinity shone forth, and within it all creatures were reflected. Thus she saw and understood everything in God through this light and these impressions of the divine nature, with greater distinction and clarity than through infused knowledge or species by which creatures are known in themselves. Through these means, from the very instant of her conception, all humans and angels with their orders, dignities, and operations were made known to her, along with all irrational creatures with their natures and conditions. She understood the creation, state, and fall of the angels, the justification and glory of the good, and the fall and punishment of the wicked. She saw the original state of Adam and Eve in their innocence, the deception and sin that led to their fall, and the misery into which they and their descendants were plunged. She comprehended the determination of the divine will for the restoration of humankind, and saw how the order of nature and the heavens, stars, and planets, as well as the elements, were already being prepared and disposed. She understood the purgatory, limbo, and hell, and how all these things and the creatures within them were created, maintained, and preserved solely by the divine power and infinite goodness of God, who has no need of them, 2 Mac. 1435. Above all, she understood the profound mysteries of the work God would accomplish by becoming man to redeem all humankind, leaving the fallen angels without this remedy. Through all these marvels, which the most holy soul of Mary came to understand in their proper order, at the very instant her soul was united with her body. She also performed heroic acts of virtue. These acts were filled with incomparable admiration, praise, glory, adoration, humility, love of God, and sorrow for the sins committed against that supreme good, whom she recognized as the author and purpose of so many wondrous works. She immediately offered herself as an acceptable sacrifice to the Most High, beginning at that very moment, with fervent affection, to bless, love, and revere him for what both the fallen angels and humanity had failed to do in loving and recognizing him. She, who already was their queen, implored the holy angels to assist her in glorifying the Creator and Lord of all, and to intercede for her as well. In that instant, the Lord also revealed to Mary the guardian angels assigned to her. She saw and recognized them, welcomed them with kindness and reverence, and invited them to join her in alternately singing hymns of praise to the Most High. She informed them that this would be their shared mission throughout her mortal life, to assist and guard her. She also came to know her entire genealogy and the rest of the holy and chosen people of God, including the patriarchs and prophets. She saw how marvelously the divine majesty had worked through them, granting them gifts, graces, and favors. It is truly worthy of admiration that, despite her tiny body, so small at the first instant of its union with her most holy soul that its external faculties were barely perceptible, the divine power and right hand of God decreed that no miraculous excellence be lacking in her, who was chosen to be the Mother of God. Thus she was moved with sorrow and understanding for humanity's fall into sin, and she wept and shed tears in her mother's womb, grieving over the weight of sin committed against the supreme good. With this miraculous compassion, Mary prayed at the very moment of her existence for the redemption of humankind, beginning her role as mediatrix, advocate, and restorer. She presented to God the cries of the holy patriarchs and the just ones of the earth, imploring his mercy to hasten the salvation of mortals, whom she already regarded as her brothers and sisters. Even before living among them, she loved them with an ardent charity, and as soon as she had natural existence, she became their benefactress, with the divine and fraternal love that burned in her enkindled heart. The Most High accepted these petitions with greater delight than all the prayers of the saints and angels. It was revealed to her, who had been created to become the Mother of God, that her prayers were uniquely pleasing to him, though she did not yet know the ultimate purpose of her existence. However, she understood the immense love of the Lord and his desire to descend from heaven to redeem humanity. It was fitting that he should feel especially obliged to hasten his coming in response to the prayers and petitions of this singular creature, for whom he primarily came and from whom he was to take flesh. In her, he would perform the most admirable of all his works, fulfilling and surpassing them all. At the very instant of her conception, Mary prayed for her natural parents, Joachim and Anne. Even before seeing them with her bodily eyes, she knew and recognized them in God, exercising the virtues of love, reverence, and filial gratitude toward them, acknowledging them as the secondary cause of her natural being. She also made many other petitions, both general and specific, for various causes. With her infused knowledge, she immediately composed hymns of praise in her mind and heart, rejoicing that at the threshold of life she had recovered the precious coin, Luke 15 verse 9, that humanity had lost at its origin. She found grace which came to meet her, and the divinity which awaited her at the threshold of nature. From the moment of her creation, her faculties encountered the most noble object, God himself, who moved and directed them, for they were created solely for him. All her powers, being entirely ordered toward God, offered him the first fruits of their operation, divine knowledge and love. In Mary, there was never existence without knowledge of God, nor knowledge without love, nor love without merit. Nothing in her was small or measured by common laws or general rules. All was great, and she emerged from the hand of the Almighty, destined to walk, grow, and reach such heights that only God himself could be greater. Oh, how beautiful are your steps, daughter of the Prince! For with your first step you reached the divinity. You are twice beautiful, because your grace and beauty surpass all other beauty and grace. Your eyes are divine, and your thoughts are like the king's royal purple, for you have captured his heart. You have wounded him with these locks of love, binding him and drawing him to the embrace of your virginal womb and heart. Here indeed was the bride of the king asleep, while her heart kept vigil. Her bodily senses, still undeveloped and having not yet seen the material light of the sun, rested in slumber, while her divine heart, more incomprehensible for the greatness of its gifts than for the smallness of its natural being, kept vigil in the chamber of her mother's womb. There it was illuminated by the light of the divinity, which enkindled it with the fire of God's immense love. It was fitting that, in this divine creature, the lower powers of the soul would not act before the higher ones, nor would the higher powers operate in a way inferior to or equal to those of any other creature. Since action corresponds to the essence of each being, the one who is always superior to all in dignity and excellence had to act in a way proportionately superior to all other angelic and human creatures. Not only was she not to lack the excellence of the angelic spirits, who immediately used their powers upon their creation, but this same greatness and prerogative was owed to her, who was created to be their queen and lady. This was owed to her with far greater advantages, for the title and office of Mother of God surpassed that of his servants, just as the title of Queen surpasses that of subjects. To none of the angels did the Word ever say, "You are my mother," nor could any of them say to him, "You are my son." This unique relationship existed only between Mary and the eternal Word, and through this relationship, the greatness of Mary is to be measured and understood, just as the Apostle measured the greatness of Christ. As I write of these sacraments of the King, now that it is honorable to reveal his works, I confess my inadequacy and limitations as a woman. I am distressed because I must speak in common and insufficient terms that do not reach the depth of what I understand through the light given to my soul about these mysteries. It would require other words, reasons, and terms, more particular and appropriate, to avoid diminishing such grandeur, but my ignorance prevents me from attaining them. Even if I had them, they would still surpass and overwhelm human weakness. Let us therefore recognize our inferiority and inadequacy to fully comprehend this divine Son, which enters the world veiled by the cloud of St. Anne's maternal womb. If we all wish to draw near and behold this marvelous vision, let us come freely and unburdened. some shedding their natural cowardice, others their fear and timidity, even when disguised as humility. But let us all approach with the utmost devotion and piety, far removed from a spirit of contention. Then it will be permitted to us to gaze closely at the fire of divinity in the midst of the bush, without consuming it. I have stated that the most holy soul of Mary, at the first instant of her Immaculate Conception, saw the divine essence abstractively. I say this because I have not been given the light to affirm that she saw the essential glory of God. Instead, I understand that this singular privilege belonged uniquely to the most holy soul of Christ, as it was fitting and consequent to the substantial union of the divinity in the person of the Word. This ensured that, not even for a single instant, would Christ's human soul be separated from the divinity through the faculties of his soul, by supreme grace and glory. As Christ, our Redeemer, was simultaneously both man and God from the moment of his existence, he began at once to know and love God as one who comprehends him. However, the soul of his most holy mother was not substantially united to the divinity, and therefore did not begin to act as a comprehensor. Instead, she entered life as a pilgrim soul, journeying toward the beatific vision. Yet, being the closest to the hypostatic union, Mary was granted a vision proportionate to her singular dignity, one that was the nearest to the beatific vision while still being inferior to it. This vision, however, was superior to any vision or revelation of the divinity to any other creature who had not enjoyed the clear beatific vision. In some respects, the vision of the divinity granted to Mary at the first moment of her existence surpassed the intuitive vision of others, as she came to understand more mysteries abstractively than others could comprehend intuitively. The fact that she did not see the divinity face to face at the moment of her conception does not preclude that, later in her life, she was granted this clear vision many times, as I will explain further. The doctrine the Queen of Heaven gave me regarding this chapter. In the course of what I have written, I have mentioned several times how the Queen and Mother of Mercy promised me that, when I began writing about the first operations of her faculties and virtues, she would provide me with instruction and guidance to shape my own life according to the pure mirror of hers. This is the principal purpose of this teaching. True to her word, this great lady, who always assists me with her divine presence while revealing these mysteries, has now begun to fulfill this promise in this chapter, and has prepared me to continue receiving her instruction in the remainder of what I write. Thus, I will follow this order and style, writing at the end of each section the teachings Her Majesty grants me, as she has done here, speaking to me in the following manner.
My daughter, as you write the mysteries and sacraments of my most holy life, I desire that you yourself reap the fruit you long for, and that the reward for your labors be the greater purity and perfection of your own life, provided that, with the grace of the Most High, you prepare yourself to imitate me by acting upon what you learn. This is the will of my most holy Son, that you extend your efforts to what I teach you, dedicating with all the affection of your heart your attention to my virtues and deeds. Listen to me with attention and faith, for I will speak to you words of eternal life, and teach you the most holy and perfect principles of the Christian life, those most pleasing to the eyes of God. From this moment on, begin to prepare yourself more fully to receive the light by which the hidden mysteries of my most holy life and the doctrine you desire will be revealed to you. Continue this practice, and you will write what I teach you for this purpose. Now, pay close attention.
It is an act of justice owed to the eternal God that, when a creature receives the use of reason, its first movement should be directed toward God, recognizing him in order to love, revere, and adore him as the sole Creator and true Lord. Parents, by natural obligation, must instruct their children from an early age in this knowledge, carefully guiding them so that they may seek and find their ultimate purpose with the very first acts of reason and will. Parents should make every effort to steer their children away from the trivialities and childish amusements toward which their fallen nature inclines, if left without proper guidance. If fathers and mothers were to prevent these deceptions and misdirected habits early on, teaching their children from infancy about God and their Creator, they would later find them more capable of knowing and worshiping Him from the very beginning of their reasoning. My Holy Mother, unaware of my wisdom and state, carried this out with great diligence and anticipation. While carrying me in her womb, she adored the Creator on my behalf, offering Him the highest reverence and thanks for having created me. She prayed for my protection, and that I might be delivered safely from the state in which I then existed. Similarly, parents must fervently pray to God, entrusting His providence with the souls of their children, that they may receive baptism and be freed from the bondage of original sin. If a rational creature has not recognized and adored the Creator upon gaining the use of reason, it is bound to do so the moment it becomes aware of that supreme being and sole good, now known through faith. From this point onward, the soul must strive never to lose sight of God, and must continually fear, love, and revere Him. You, my daughter, have owed this act of adoration to God throughout your life. But now, I wish for you to perform and perfect it, as I will teach you. Focus the inner gaze of your soul on the being of God, without beginning or end. See Him as infinite in attributes and perfections, as the only true holiness, the supreme good, the most noble object of creation, the one who gave being to all creatures, and who, without needing them, sustains and governs them. He is the consummate beauty without stain or defect, eternal in love, truthful in His words, and utterly faithful in His promises. He is the one who gave His own life and submitted to torment for the good of His creatures, though none of them deserved it. Extend your vision and occupy your faculties in this immense field of goodness and gifts, never forgetting Him or turning away from Him. For, having come to know the supreme good, it would be a shameful and disloyal act to forget Him with detestable ingratitude. It would be even more so for you, who have received a superior divine light beyond the common and ordinary infused faith. Should your understanding and will ever stray from the path of divine love, even through weakness, immediately seek Him again with all haste and diligence. Humble yourself and adore the Most High, giving Him honor, magnificence, and eternal praise. Take note that to perform this incessantly on behalf of yourself and all creatures must be regarded as your own sacred duty. I desire that you live with great care for this purpose. To strengthen your exercise of these truths, reflect in your heart on what you know I did, and how that first vision of the supreme good wounded my heart with love, compelling me to give myself entirely to Him, never to lose Him. Despite this, I lived always vigilant, never resting, striving to reach the center of my desires and affections. For, since the object of love is infinite, love itself must also be without end and cannot rest until it fully possesses Him. After knowledge of God and love for Him, you must turn to knowing yourself, reflecting upon and contemplating your own littleness and unworthiness. Be aware that deeply understanding, repeating, and pondering these truths produces divine effects in the soul. After hearing these words and others from the Queen, I said to Her Majesty, "My Lady, whose servant I am, and to whom I dedicate and consecrate myself anew, my heart has, with good reason, been longing for this day when I might behold the ineffable greatness of your virtues in the mirror of your divine works, and hear the sweetness of your life-giving words. I confess, my Queen, with all my heart, that I have no good works to deserve this favor. To write of your most holy life, I consider an act of such boldness and unworthiness that, were it not in obedience to your will and that of your most holy Son, I would not dare hope for forgiveness. Receive, my Lady, this sacrifice of praise, and speak, for your servant is listening." 1 Samuel 3 verse 10. "Let your most sweet voice resound in my ears, for you have the words of eternal life. Continue, my Queen, your instruction and light, so that my heart may expand in the immense sea of your perfections, and find worthy matter to praise the Almighty. In my heart burns the fire that your kindness has kindled, igniting within me a desire for what is holiest, purest, and most pleasing to your eyes. Yet, in my lower nature, I feel the law of my members warring against the Spirit, Romans 7 verse 23, holding me back and hindering me, and I rightly fear that it may prevent me from receiving the good that you, merciful Mother, offer to me. Look upon me, my Lady, as your daughter. teach me as your disciple, correct me as your servant, and compel me as your slave whenever I am slow or resistant. I do not wish to resist willingly, but I fear my weakness will cause me to falter. I will lift my eyes to behold the being of God, and, with his divine grace, I will govern my affections so that they fall in love with his infinite perfections. And if I have him, I will not let him go. But you, my Lady and Mother of knowledge and of beautiful love, ask your Son, my Lord, not to abandon me. For he showed boundless generosity in exalting your humility, Luke 1 verse 48, Queen and Mistress of all creation.